Jason, think we'll find any treasure today? Louis asked as we hiked up the hill. The fortress loomed ahead, its jagged remnants silhouetted against the fiery sunset. If by treasure you mean a pile of rusted junk, then yeah, I replied with a smirk. Louis chuckled. Come on, you know they say some kids found old coins here last summer. Maybe today's our lucky day. The ruins were eerily quiet, save for the rustling leaves carried by the wind. The fortress's crumbled walls created a maze of shadows and hidden corners, perfect for a game of hide-and-seek, or, in our case, treasure hunting. We started combing through the piles of leaves that had collected in the nooks of the fortress. The older kids had said that's where coins were usually found, but instead of coins, we stumbled upon something far more intriguing. A rusty chain embedded in one of the walls. Jason, check this out. Louis called. I helped him tug on the chain, and to our astonishment, a section of the wall creaked and shifted, revealing a dark, narrow stairway leading underground. No way, I breathed. It's a secret passage, Louis exclaimed, his eyes sparkling with excitement. Come on, let's check it out. Are you sure? What if it's a trap or something? Don't be such a chicken, he teased, already descending the steps. I sighed and followed him, my curiosity getting the better of me. The air grew colder as we descended, and the smell of damp earth filled my nose. It was pitch black, but luckily I had a flashlight in my backpack. Its beams sliced through the darkness, revealing the end of the stairs and a small chamber. The sight that greeted us made my blood run cold. Sitting in the center of the room was an ancient iron chair, and strapped to it was a skeletal figure. Its bony wrists and ankles were held in place by glinting silver brackets. Despite the rust covering the chair, the brackets gleamed as if they were brand new. Is that Baron Blackthorn? Louis whispered. I didn't answer. My gaze was fixed on the figure's hollow eye sockets, which seemed to watch us even in death. Look at this, Louis said, pointing his flashlight at the ground. The floor was littered with bones, human bones. Most were skeletal hands, some fresh enough to still have skin on them. A chill ran down my spine. We should go, I said, tugging on Louis's sleeve. This place isn't right. But Louis wasn't listening. His attention had shifted to something glinting in the skeleton's lap. A ring with a dark red gemstone. Don't touch it, I warned as he reached for it. Relax, it's just a ring, he said, slipping it onto his finger. Finders keepers. The moment he put it on, I swore I heard a low chuckle echo through the chamber. By the time we climbed out of the ruins, the sun had set, casting the world in shades of gray. The wind howled through the trees, and I couldn't shake the feeling that we were being watched. What's at home? I said. As we walked back to Lawnmoor, I noticed the ring on Louis's hand seemed to glow faintly under the moonlight. Are you sure you should have taken that? I asked. My grandpa always said you shouldn't mess with stuff from graves. Jason, it's just a stupid ring, Louis replied, though he sounded less confident than before. That night, Louis called me, his voice trembling. Jason, I had a dream, no, a nightmare. The Baron came for the ring. He said it was his, and that I had no right to take it. I tried to take it off, but it wouldn't budge. He said he'd take my hand if I didn't return it. Did you get the ring off? I asked, already dreading the answer. No, my finger's swollen, and it's stuck. What do I do? The next morning, I grabbed a pair of wire cutters and headed to Louis's house. After much effort, we managed to snap the ring off his finger. But when we tried to throw it away, it reappeared in Louis's pocket. We have to take it back, I said. Put it back where you found it. We returned to the ruins, but the hidden passage was gone, as if it had never existed. Desperate, we buried the ring under a pile of leaves and hurried home. That night, Louis called again. It's back, he whispered. The ring, it's in my pocket again. Hide it, I suggested. Make a decoy, like they do in fairy tales. Maybe you can trick the Baron. The next morning, I ran to Louis's house, but it was too late. Police cars and an ambulance were parked outside, and a crowd had gathered. What happened? I asked one of the adults. Terrible thing, the man replied. Louis was found dead in his room. His arms, they were gone, cut clean off. Whoever did it left straw stuffed in his clothes, like some kind of scarecrow. My stomach turned. Did anyone see a ring on him? A red one? A ring? No, there wasn't anything like that, the man said. I'll never forget that day. To this day, I can't explain what happened. The ring disappeared after Louis's death, and the legend of Baron Blackthorn faded back into obscurity. And I can't help but wonder, did the Baron finally get what he wanted, or is he still out there, waiting for someone foolish enough to claim his cursed treasure? Weeks passed after Louis's tragic death, but I couldn't let go of what had happened. Everyone chalked it up to a freak accident, a robbery gone wrong, or some wild animal attack, but I knew better. Baron Blackthorn wasn't just a story. He was real, and he was still out there. The thought haunted me. Every night, I dreamed of the ring, its blood-red gemstone glinting in the darkness. And sometimes, I saw Louis in my dreams, or at least a twisted version of him. His empty sleeves flapped as if filled with a phantom wind, and he would point to the ruins, whispering, "You have to finish this, Jason." I tried to ignore it, but the whispers grew louder, both in my dreams and while awake. I couldn't escape the feeling that the Baron was watching me, waiting for me to make a move. One evening, while walking home from school, I noticed a moving truck parked outside a house at the edge of town. A girl about my age was unloading boxes with the help of a tall man who looked like her dad. She caught me staring and waved. "Hey, do you live around here?" she asked, jotting over. Yeah, I said, startled by her sudden approach. I'm Evie," she said, flashing a friendly smile. "We just moved here from the city. What's there to do for fun around here?" "Fun? In Lawnmower?" I almost laughed. "Not much. There's the diner or the library, and well, there's an old fortress up the hill if you're into spooky stuff." "Spooky stuff?" Her eyes lit up. "I love spooky stuff. You'll have to show me sometime." I wasn't sure why, but I hesitated. "Yeah, maybe." A few days later, Evie cornered me at school. "So, when are you taking me to this fortress?" she asked, her arms crossed. "It's not really a place people go to for fun," I said. "Then what's the point of it being spooky?" she countered. "Come on, Jason. Don't be boring." Before I knew it, Evie and I were climbing the hill to Blackthorn Fortress. "So, what's the deal with this place?" she asked as we stepped into the ruins. I hesitated, then told her everything about the secret passage, the skeleton, the ring, and Louis. Her face shifted from amused to concerned as I spoke. "You're serious, aren't you?" she said. "Dead serious," I replied. Evie looked around, her expression thoughtful. "If what you're saying is true, then maybe there's more to this place than we thought. Did you ever try to find the passage again?" "No," I admitted. "After what happened to Louis, I was too scared." "Maybe it's time we did," she said. Evie and I combed the ruins for hours, but the hidden passage remained elusive. Frustrated, I leaned against a crumbled wall and sighed. What if it only opens under certain conditions? Even used. Like, maybe it needs the ring to act as a key. "I'm not touching that thing again," I said firmly. "Fine, but what if someone else already did?" Her words sent a chill down my spine. What if someone else had found the ring since Louis's death? As if in response to her question, a low rumble echoed through the ruins. We both froze as a section of the wall shifted, revealing the staircase once more. Edie grabbed my arm. "Jason, I think we're being invited back." Armed with flashlights, we descended into the crypt. The air was even colder than before, and the dampness seemed to seep into my bones. The chamber was just as I remembered it, except for one horrifying detail. The skeletal figure in the iron chair was gone. "Where did it go?" Evie whispered. "I don't know," I said, my voice trembling. As we stood there, a deep, guttural voice echoed through the chamber. We spun around, our flashlights darting across the room. At first, we saw nothing, but then a shadow moved at the edge of the light. It stepped closer, and I felt my heart stop. It was him, Baron Blackthorn. He looked like a nightmare brought to life, his gaunt face half hidden by a tattered cloak. His eyes burned with an unnatural red glow, and the chains that had once bound him to the chair now hung from his wrists like grotesque jewelry. "You brought this upon yourselves," he said, his voice like the creak of ancient wood. "Wait!" Evie shouted, stepping forward. The Baron tilted his head, his burning eyes narrowing. We didn't take your ring, she said. It wasn't us. The Baron's lips twisted into a cruel smile. Yet you tread upon my domain. You seek my secrets. That alone is enough to invoke my wrath. Please, I said, my voice shaking. We'll leave, and we'll never come back. Just let us go. The Baron raised a hand, and the air grew heavier, making it hard to breathe. You cannot escape your fate, boy. But I am not without mercy. Perhaps the trade can be arranged. What kind of trade? Evie asked wearily. The ring, he said simply. Return it to me, and I shall spare your lives. But we don't have it, I protested. Then find it, he snarled. Evie and I fled the crypt, our hearts pounding. Back in the light of day, the fortress seemed less menacing, but the Baron's words lingered in my mind. What do we do now? Evie asked. There's only one place we can go, I said. Noe's house. We sneaked into Louis's house that night, searching for any sign of the ring. His room had been left untouched since his death, and the sight of it made my stomach churn. After hours of searching, Evie found something tucked under his bed, a small, locked box. This is to be it, she said. We pried it open, and there it was, the cursed ring, its gemstone glowing faintly. We need to get this back to the Baron, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. But as we turned to leave, a cold wind swept through the room, and the shadows seemed to come alive. Jason, Evie said, her voice trembling. We're not alone. With the ring in hand, we returned to the fortress. The passage opened immediately, as if it had been waiting for us. The Baron was already in the chamber, his eyes blazing with fury. You have what is mine, he said, extending a skeletal hand. Evie and I stepped forward cautiously, holding the ring out. But just as the Baron reached for it, the ring pulsed with a blinding light. A voice echoed through the chamber. Not the Baron's, but something older, near powerful. You have no claim here, Blackthorn, it said. The Baron screamed as the light enveloped him, and when it faded, he was gone. Evie and I stood in stunned silence. The ring lay on the ground, its glow extinguished. What just happened, she asked. I don't know, I said, but I think it's over. We buried the ring deep in the woods, far from the fortress, and vowed never to speak of it again. For weeks after our encounter with the Baron, life in Lawnmoor began to settle back into an uneasy rhythm. Evie and I avoided the fortress entirely, and the ring stayed buried deep in the woods. But the strange events hadn't stopped. Lights flickered inexplicably at school and home. Shadows seemed to stretch unnaturally long in the corners of rooms. And more than once, I swore I heard the faint echo of chains rattling in the distance. One night, as I was finishing up my homework, my phone buzzed. It was a text from Evie. Jason, something's wrong. Meet me at the diner. Now! I found Evie sitting at a corner booth, nervously tapping her fingers against the table. She looked up as I slid into the seat across from her, her face pale and drawn. What's going on? I asked. She didn't answer right away, instead placing an old, leather-bound book on the table between us. Its cracked spine and faded gold lettering gave it an air of mystery. I found this in the library, she said finally. It's a local history book, but there's a chapter about Blackthorn Fortress. I opened the book, scanning the pages. The section on Baron Blackthorn was lengthy and detailed, filled with accounts of strange disappearances and whispered curses. One passage caught my eye. Those who encounter the Baron's wrath must fulfill his bargain, or risk unleashing a greater darkness. We gave the ring back, I said. The bargain is complete. Evie shook her head. It's not that simple. Look at this. She flipped to another page, showing a sketch of the ring. Beneath it was a single line that made my blood run cold. The ring is not an artifact. It is a tether. A tether to what? I asked. To something worse, she said. Evie convinced me we needed to go back to the fortress, as much as I hated the idea. If the ring is a tether, then burying it isn't enough, she said. We have to figure out what it's tied to. Reluctantly, I agreed. The fortress was even more foreboding at night. The ruins shrouded in mist and the faint rustle of leaves creating an eerie backdrop. As we descended into the crypt, I felt a familiar weight of dread settle over me. This time, we ventured deeper than before, past the iron chair and into a narrow passageway that seemed to stretch endlessly into the darkness. The air grew colder with every step, and the faint sound of whispers filled the corridor. Finally, we emerged into a massive underground chamber. At its center was a stone pedestal, and on it sat an ancient, intricately carved box. "What is that?" Evie asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "I don't know," I said, "but I think we're about to find out." As we approached the box, a deep rumble shook the chamber. The walls seemed to shift, and from the shadows emerged a towering figure. It was unlike anything I'd ever seen. A grotesque amalgamation of stone and shadow, with glowing red eyes and jagged claws that scraped against the floor. "Who dares disturb the vault?" It growled, its voice reverberating through the chamber. "We're just trying to stop whatever's happening," Evie said, stepping forward. The creature's eyes narrowed. "The tether has been severed, but the seal remains weak." The Baron sought to control the power within, but he underestimated its wrath. "What tower?" I asked. The creature didn't answer directly. Instead, it gestured to the box. "Inside lies the source of the darkness. To contain it requires great sacrifice." Evie and I exchanged uneasy glances. "What kind of sacrifice?" I asked. "The bond must be reforged," the creature said. "One of you must bear the ring and take on the burden of the tether." "No way," Evie said immediately. "We're not doing that." The creature tilted its head. "Then the seal will break, and the darkness will consume all." The weight of a decision pressed down on me. If we didn't act, Lawnmower, and maybe more, would be in danger. But wearing the ring had nearly destroyed me before. "Can I risk it again?" "I'll do it," I said, my voice steady despite the fear bubbling inside me. "Jason, no," Evie said, grabbing my arm. "I don't see another choice," I said. "If this is the only way to keep everyone safe, then I have to." The creature stepped aside, allowing me to approach the pedestal. My hands shook as I lifted the box's lid, revealing the ring resting on a bed of black velvet. As soon as I touched it, the chamber filled with a blinding light. I felt a surge of energy rush through me, both exhilarating and terrifying. The whispers grew louder, filling my mind with fragments of ancient knowledge and warnings. When the light faded, the ring was on my finger and the box was empty. "You have chosen wisely," the creature said. "But beware, the tether will test your strength. Seal, and the darkness will reclaim its hold." For a while, life returned to a semblance of normalcy. The strange occurrences around town stopped, and the fortress seemed to lose its sinister aura. But I could feel the ring's presence constantly, like a cold weight around my finger. At night, I dreamed of the Baron, the vault, and the creature's warning. Evie stuck by me, though she was just as uneasy about the ring as I was. "We'll figure this out," she said one day. "There has to be a way to break the tether for good." One evening, while researching in the library, we stumbled upon an old journal belonging to one of the Baron's servants. It detailed a ritual that could permanently seal the darkness, but it required the tether bearer to willingly relinquish their bond. "It's risky," Evie said. "What if it doesn't work?" "It's a risk I'll have to take," I said. We gathered the necessary items and returned to the fortress for what I hoped would be the last time. The ritual was complicated, involving ancient chants and precise movements. As I stood in the center of the crypt, the ring began to glow, and the whispers grew deafening. The shadows around us writhed and twisted, and for a moment, I thought the darkness would overwhelm me. But then, Evie's voice cut through the noise. "Stay with me, Jason," she shouted. Her words grounded me, and I focused all my energy on completing the ritual. With one final incantation, the ring shattered, and the darkness dissolved into nothingness. When it was over, the crypt was silent. The oppressive weight I'd felt for weeks was gone, and for the first time I felt free. Evie and I climbed out of the fortress, the first rays of dawn breaking over the horizon. "Do you think it's really over?" she asked. "I think so," I said, though a small part of me wondered if the darkness was truly gone, or if it was simply waiting for another opportunity. As we walked back to town, I couldn't help but feel a sense of hope. We'd faced the shadows and come out the other side, stronger and more united than before. But one thing was certain, I'd never look at Lawnmoor the same way again. In the weeks that followed the ritual, the fortress and its haunting grip on Lawnmoor seemed to have subsided. The whispers were gone, the flickering lights had stopped, and for the first time in months, the town felt ordinary. But ordinary wasn't what I felt. The ring might have shattered, but its mark hadn't left me. Strange dreams continued to plague my nights. Dreams of endless corridors, boundless shadows, and a voice whispering my name. Nurse. I began noticing small things around me. Objects would shift subtly when I wasn't looking. Reflections in mirrors didn't always line up with reality. And sometimes, in the dead of night, I could swear I heard faint chains rattling in the distance. Evie, as always, noticed something was off. Jason, she said one afternoon as we sat by the lake, a favorite spot of ours for escaping everything. You're not okay, are you? I hesitated before answering. I don't know what's wrong. It's like the tether didn't break completely. Edie frowned, but the ritual worked. We saw it. The ring shattered. I know, I said, running a hand through my hair. But what if breaking the ring wasn't enough? What if something's still connected to me? Her expression darkened. Then we need to figure out what it is before it gets worse. The first place we thought to check was the library. The journal that had helped us find the ritual still had pages we hadn't examined. Perhaps it held more clues. But when we returned to the library that evening, we found the journal missing. It was right here, Evie said, running her fingers along the shelf where we'd last left it. I know it was. Maybe someone else borrowed it, I suggested, though even as I said it, I didn't believe it. The librarian, a kindly older woman named Mrs. Harris, looked puzzled when we asked about it. I don't recall anyone checking out that book, she said. In fact, I didn't even know we had something like that. Are you sure? Evie pressed. It was an old leather-bound book, kind of falling apart. Mrs. Harris shook her head. It doesn't ring a bell, but I can check the catalog for you. We nodded, though both of us knew it wouldn't help. As we left the library, the weight of unease settled heavier on my shoulders. The next day, I was in my locker when a voice behind me said, "You're Jason, right?" I turned to see a boy I didn't recognize. He looked a little older than me, with messy dark hair and an air of quiet intensity. He held out his hand. "Name's Millie." Hi, I said, shaking his hand. "Can I help you?" Eli glanced around, as if to make sure no one was listening. "I heard you've been poking around the old fortress. Got yourself mixed up in something you shouldn't have." My stomach's sake. "Who told you that?" "I've got my sources," he said with a small smirk. "Would you say I'm familiar with the kind of stuff you're dealing with?" "Familiar how?" Evie asked, appearing beside me. She eyed Millie warily. "Let's just say I've been down a similar road," Millie replied. "And if you're smart, you'll listen to me. Whatever you think you've solved, you have it." Reluctantly, we agreed to meet Millie that evening at the lake. He showed up carrying a weathered satchel, which he set down before sitting across from us. "So," Evie said, crossing her arms, "what do you know that we don't?" Eli opened the satchel and pulled out a stack of papers and photographs. "The tether isn't just a connection," he explained. "It's a gateway. When you broke the ring, you didn't sever the connection. You widened the door." My throat went dry. "What does that mean?" "It means," Millie said grimly, "that whatever you've been dreaming about, it's not just in your head. The tether's not holding something back anymore. It's letting something through." Edie looked horrified. "But we did the ritual. We closed the seal." Eli shook his head. "You didn't close it. You weakened it. And now, whatever's on the other side is trying to come through."